Hi, welcome back to my channel, you guys. I am Reina, your new book bestie, and I will continue to say your new book bestie until we really do become book besties. Today, we're going to be talking about my January reads. I read 5 books, and I cannot wait to tell you guys all about it. My reviews are posted in Goodreads, but I wanted to talk about them because that's what we like to do, right? I always post my reviews first in Goodreads. I go ahead into detail how I feel. I try not to give out spoilers, but if I do, I literally just put it all the way at the bottom and I give you a few warnings before. That way you don't get the, book spoiled by any of my reviews. So let's get started. The first book that I read was The Answer Is No by Frederick Backman. This was a short story. It was one of the Amazon first reads, and I absolutely love Frederick Backman. I have a couple of his books back there, and I also have some other book ones in my stack of TBRs. So I'll eventually get to those. But like I was saying, I love Frederick Backman. His work is just, it's so different. And the way he just writes the stories, I love it. Like you just have to trust the process when reading one of his books. The answer is no. This was a short story and I did enjoy the book. It was very short, it was very cute. I laughed towards the middle, towards the end. At the beginning I was not really understanding what was going on. Luca wants to be left alone. He likes to go to work. He likes his routine. He likes to eat the same things. He likes to come home and play his video games and do everything all over again. Doesn't like to be bothered at all. But then a frying pan appears outside of his apartment and the neighbors start going crazy about it and they come knocking at to his door wondering what happened. And he's like, "You know what? I have no idea what happened. It's not mine." But then the neighbors keep coming back and coming back and coming back. Things happened that he ends up getting involved, having to find out what happened and who left that frying pan outside of his apartment. And y'all, it was very funny. I will admit that at first I was not understanding. I was just like, what is this? Like, I don't get it. I gave this one a 3 star. Again, I really enjoyed it. Probably not my favorite work of his, but I still think it was very cute. I still recommend you guys reading it. It gives you kind of like a lesson towards the end. So check out Frederick Backman's The Answer Is No, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, now we have A Fate Inked in Blood. I don't know if it's going, can you see it? Is it blurry? Y'all, oh my gosh. If you have not read this book, what are you waiting for? Because I waited so long. I actually bought this book when it came out because of the spread edges. Look at how beautiful it is. Look at the metallic blue spread edges. I was like, I need to have this book. I don't know what this book is about, but I need it. I really truly enjoyed this Viking story. This is my first Viking story that I read. I didn't know what this book was about. All I knew was that it was a romantasy, and that was it. Let's talk about this one because y'all, it took me a minute to read it. I had it in my bookshelf for less than a year, of course. But I loved it. The romance was just so cute. I will say this though. It is my first Viking story, and I am not familiar with the Viking, names or the Viking world or the Viking ruling and all that stuff. So it was at first a little bit hard for me to understand who was what and what was going on. I did have to look up a couple of things because I'm like, what does this mean? But let's talk about the story. The story is about Freya. She's married to this fisherman guy, and y'all, he is a terrible person, but she also has a secret. Now, the only people that know about her secret is her family. So her parents and her brother, right? So her husband finds out and he ends up betraying her and basically selling her off to the Jarl. Now, the Jarl, if you don't know, I didn't know. Maybe you know, or maybe I'm dumb and I just, you know what? Let me look up what a Jarl is. Ding, ding, ding. According to Google, a Jarl was a rank of nobility in Scandinavian during the Viking Age and early Middle Ages. Back to the story. The husband ends up selling Freya off to, or betraying Freya to the Jarl. So then they bring Freya's brother and they threaten to kill him. And that's when Freya's like, do not touch my brother. That's when her secret comes out. And basically, she ends up defending her brother. Something crazy happens. And that's when the Jarl is like, okay, you want to stay alive, you're going to have to fight the best warrior out there, which it happens to be his son. So now she's having to fight the son of the Jarl, which he is Bjorn. I'm not giving you any secrets because obviously it's in the back of the book, but y'all, that's when the story starts. Anyway, all I'm saying is that read it. I promise you, you're gonna like it. It's a short book. It gave me some of like Game of Thrones, Silver Flames, a little bit of Twilight mixed in it. It was I ate it up. I read this one in like I think 3 days because I just wanted to know what was gonna happen. It was a little predictable here and there, like you can kind of see where it's going, but it was so good. I cannot wait for the second book to come out. I gave this one a 4 star. Read it. If you have not picked this one up, I promise you, you are going to enjoy it. We have book number 3. Now, I don't have to look at my notes for this one. Everyone knows and everyone has seen Fourth Wing. So I don't think I have to explain what this book is about, but I'm going to give you a little something just in case. Fourth Wing is about a war college with dragons. This is one of my favorite series that's out. I don't care what anybody thinks. If you're not a fan of Fourth Wing, if you think this is such a silly book, that's how you feel, and that's valid. It's just not for everyone, but I absolutely loved it. I couldn't stop thinking about this book the first time I read it, 2023, and I loved it. I couldn't stop thinking about this book that I immediately had to reread it. And now, because Onyx Storm came out this year, I did my third reread. The third time around just hits different because y'all, you can see everything, like the foreshadowing for what happens in Iron Flame, or the foreshadowing to what's coming up for Onyx Storm. I cried all over again. That one scene that, if you've read this book, you already know which one I'm talking about. I was still sobbing again, like as if it was my first time reading it. So um I love the banter. I love the relationships that happened. I just really liked how it was easy to read, not too complicated. This is such a great book if you want to start getting into fantasy, but you don't know where to start. I had so much fun reading it, and the reread was even better. So this was another one of my reads for January. I did start doing my reread for Iron Flame. Now, I didn't have time to finish it, so I'm not including Iron Flame in my January reads. I barely got to like 30%, but I didn't get to finish it because then Onyx Storm came out, and I only had a week to finish Onyx Storm, so I had to focus on reading Onyx Storm. So the next book that I read was Moncilio by Gerardo Samano Cordova. Sorry, I had to look it up. And this was an interesting book. Now, I don't know really how to describe this book. This was a horror fiction novel. One of my friends was reading this book for her book club, so we started listening to it, and I was hooked. Like the first few chapters, I was like, "Whoa, what is this?" Because what the heck is going on? I was intrigued, and I was like, "You know what? I want to read it. I'll read it on my own." At the beginning, it was good, like it hooked me, but then it took a weird turn. It was just kind of like, oh, this is not what I was expecting it to go, to be. I was a little confused because this book was written in English, and apparently they were speaking Spanish the whole time, but it was never said that they were speaking Spanish. The main characters in this book is Magos and Joseph. Magos is a Mexican girl that marries this American designer, architect. So then they move to New York, and then they have a kid, and their kid died. He passes away. So that's kind of what the story is about. They focus on Santiago, which it's the kid that died. It's an interesting story because this is a story about grief. I guess, like, to me, it was a little bit hard to understand the way Magos was feeling about this whole situation because I haven't lost anyone, but also Whoa, I feel like this lady needed therapy. Magos annoyed me. I'm just gonna say that. I'm sorry, but Magos annoyed me. Like I was saying, Magos and Joseph, they moved to New York, but then they end up getting into a big argument, and she decides to go back home because she needs a break and wants to spend time with her family, with her mom. And it was a little repetitive. This should have been a shorter book, and it was just weird. And that was that. So that's my review. I don't know if it was the best review ever, but it was not my favorite book. But I did give it a 3 just because I did wanted to talk about this. I went ahead and posted it on my Goodreads if you just want to read literally my 5-page description of how I felt about this book. And yeah, let's talk about Onyx Storm. I'm not gonna spoil it because it's still fairly like a new book, and I don't want to spoil it to anyone. So I'm just gonna tell you how I felt about this book, and I also want to show you. Hold on, hold up. I got the Target edition and the regular edition. I got lucky because one of when the Target edition came out, I had zero luck trying to get this book, but one of my friends somehow she was able to find two, so she gave me one and one to her other friend. So we absolutely love her, Brandy. I'm giving you a shout out because you are the MVP. Let me show you the different. In case you have not seen, I'm pretty sure you've seen it, but the Target edition, it has a colored map. Not sure if you can see, but it's a colored map, and it also has some illustrations, like some artwork somewhere in here. This is one of them. I think he has 5 different ones, so they're somewhere in here. Anyway, you get the point. I couldn't find it. But it has like 4 or 5. I can't remember. And then of course the difference is the sprayed edges. Can you see? I don't know if it's focusing on this thing. But hold on. I want to show you what's special about my Onyx Storm regular edition or deluxe edition. Do you see the dragons? And do you see this? Yo, I got a signed copy of Onyx Storm. We ended up going to the Onyx Storm book tour to see Rebecca Yarros in St. Paul, Minnesota. And it was so freaking cool. Like the moderator happened to be another one of my favorite authors. It was Abby Jimenez. We had such a blast. My friends and I, we flew literally to Minnesota because obviously the Onyx Storm book tour, but also because we knew that Abby Jimenez lives in Minnesota and she has her bake shop out there. So we wanted to go out and try both of them out. And it was fantastic. Let's get back to Onyx Storm. Yo, this book, I finished this book in a week, right? Because when it came out, the next week we had to go see Rebecca. So I basically only had like 7 days to finish it, but I finished it literally like 2 hours before seeing Rebecca. So when I finished it, I was like, what? Like that's it? And that's a lot of that's a lot of people's reaction. So I had mixed feelings when I finished it. I was not sure if it was my favorite book, but then after I started processing what happened and I started processing the book little by little, literally that night we got back to the hotel and I was like, hold on, what? I need to go back and read that one last chapter. So I had to read the last chapter and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then the next day, we would just be out and about walking around. And then I would start thinking about, things that were happening in the book. I'm like, wait, 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 wait. So me and my friends were just talking about this whole book the whole time. It truly, truly is a really, really, really good book. It took me a while to process because I also had book club and we were reading this from my book club with my other book friends. And after having that conversation with them, like we literally talked for 2 hours about this book, that's when I really said, you know what? I was thinking of moving this to a 4 because at first I was just like, I think this is like between 3.5. Again, not a 5. I didn't really feel like it was a 5. It didn't make me feel the same way that Fourth Wing made me feel, or Iron Flame. Like I cried when I read Fourth Wing. a few times. I cried when I read Iron Flame. With this one, I did not cry. And I think it was because I was reading it too fast. Like I wasn't taking my time. There is like a scene or two here where I feel like I should have cried, knowing me because I am a crybaby, but I did not cry. I did get teary eyed. My friends were like right next to me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I think I'm gonna cry." But I ended up not crying. But I did get very sad and very emotional. I really want to do like a full reread again, just because I missed a lot of things, and also I want to make sure like I get the reaction that it deserved. So I moved it from a 3.5 to a 4. I gave it a 4 in Goodreads. And I think even in my notes, I think this is a 4.5. It was honestly a really good book. The character development, getting different POVs, getting more of certain characters that I loved. And it did answer some of the questions that we were really wanting. If you have not read it, read it, but take your time because we do not know when the next one comes out. And it's probably not going to be till 2027. So this was my rating for Onyx Storm, and that is my recap. I read 5 books. The Answer is No by Frederick Backman, A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle Jensen, Fourth Ring Reread by the one and only Rebecca Yarros, Monstrillo by Gerardo Samano Cordova, and Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. And like I said, I always post my book reviews first in Goodreads. So go ahead and follow me in Goodreads if you have Goodreads. Let me know if you've read any of those books. Let me know which one's your favorite, which one's your least favorite. Make sure to subscribe and help you grow out. And happy reading.